Welcome everybody to another codezing.org lecture. Today's project is going to be our first level 2 project. So good job if you made it through all the level 1 projects. There were quite a few. Hopefully you learned the basics, learned and how the code goes together, how it works, how it functions, and we'll start doing some a little more advanced or showing you different ways to do some of the stuff we learned in level 1. This first project is division with remainder. So it's kind of in helping my kids with their homework. You find out, when they want to check their long division problems and there's a remainder, they can't just punch it into a calculator to double check because it gives you a decimal. So this program does the division but shows you the actual remainder instead of a decimal like you get on a calculator. So you can get the code and an example at codezing.org/divide. So let's head over there. If you go to codezing.org, level 2, our first project here, division with remainder. So we can see if you enter your problem, 50, let's say divided by 3, submit, and you get 16, remainder 2. So cool. Instead of the decimal, you get the actual remainder. You can get the code down here, click on the button. Let's copy our code and open Spider. If you don't have Spider and you don't have Python, you probably better go back to level 1. But if you just need Python installed, there's links on the website that can help you navigate that process. So here's our code, and why don't we just run it, make sure it works here. Enter dividend. I had to print this out because I think a lot of people aren't familiar with the terminal dividend, divisor, and quotient, but it'll help you figure it out. So dividend and the divisor we picked was 3 earlier, and so we get 16, remainder 2, which is the right answer we were looking for. So let's see, so if we look at the code, we can see this first bit is just printing out what was up here. Print dividend over divisor equals quotient. And we could even, you can see it's kind of running into this if you really wanted to. You could do like just to print a blank text string. See, and then that time it makes a little space, makes it a little easier to see. There we go. This next part is the input for the dividend, and then the input for the divisor. And just like on a lot of the level 1 projects, you saw the input just posts this text string to the console and then expects the user to input something, thus the input, and it assigns that to the variable dividend. Int is just converting that into an integer instead of text, and we need to do that so we can do math on it. Python can't do math on a text string. In most cases, Python's really good at figuring out what type of variable you're trying to work with, but on inputs, it's always going to assume it's text, so you have to just tell it that it's an integer that you're working with. So we got the dividend and the divisor from the user, and then this is just calculating the whole number, so that in this case, the 16. So this is just dividend divided by the divisor, but it's turning it into an int. So let's see what this is doing. Whole number as an int. And if we did it without putting int around it, if we just did this, we'll see as a, and it's going to give us back a float unless we tell it an int. So let's run this just to see what's happening. Enter the dividend and the divisor, and we can see that 16 as an int, 16 as a float. I'm sorry. This needs to come after. If I print it before, it actually does the calculation. That's not right. There we go. Right. So now it will calculate what whole number is and then print it out. I was trying to print it out before it even calculated it. That's why I wasn't getting my decimals as I expected. Sorry, 50 and 3. There we go. Alright, so 16 as an int is this chunk. So it calculates the dividend divided by divisor, but turns it into an integer. The next one keeps it as a float, which, as you can see, keeps the decimal. You can see when you make something an int, it doesn't round it, it just chops off the decimal. So that was a simple, easy way to get the whole number in the answer without having to do anything else. So that first chunk of code will give us the whole number. Now we need to get the remainder, this remainder 2 piece. Let's run this again just to make sure I didn't mess it up with all my fool around. Alright, so it still works. 16, remainder 2. So we got the 16 is calculated in this line 8, and the remainder 2 is going to be calculated here. Now this looks really weird. This was one of the things I had to learn early on. So this percentage sign, dividend percentage sign divisor. Now what that does is it gives you, they call the modulo. So modulo is just that, like the remainder. A lot of times in programming, modulo is really cool because you can use it to test for, if you say I want something to happen every 10 times in a loop, you can start a count, and then when it's count modulo 10 equals 0, then you know you've done it 10 times. So that's where modulo usually comes in programming. But this will help us just get the remainder. So just like whole number int chopped off the first half, modulo always gives you just the remainder. And so that's true on anything. So you don't necessarily have to get the whole number. If you just want the remainder piece, you can use the percent sign, modulo. And then we're printing this out a little different than we had in any of the previous ones, the previous lessons. So this is printing to the console the text string quotient equals, and then we got these brackets, and then R, and then brackets, and then it's ending the text string. And so you would think it would just literally print out that. So if you just print that, you are going to get very literally the brackets are going to show up. But Python has a dot format function that allows you to place the variables inside the brackets automatically. The other thing format lets you do is to put in commas and decimals and to format strings in a particular way. So format's a little more powerful. This is a very basic way to use format, where you're saying I have multiple variables and I want to put them in this text string, and it'll just take the first one and put it in the first bracket, the second one and put it in the second bracket, and it can become more powerful, but that's one way to print it. Another way, like if we were doing it the way we had done previously, it would have been a little bit maybe messier. It would have been something like that, and then a comma, and a whole number, and then a comma, and then just the R, and then a comma, and then remainder. And I think that should give us the same thing, but you can see that this top one is much easier to read, I think. And format gives you some extra powerful tools for more complex printing to the console. Excuse me. So if we take the dividend divisor, we can see this. We almost nailed it. I add a little space here. What does that have a space? Something not because I put a space there. Let's try it one more time. I don't know why it's adding an extra little space in between the R and the 2. Since my R is right at the end of the text string, I would have thought it would just print the remainder after, but put a little space in there. Either way, it's generally the same the same thing printing out. Two different ways to print. This is the one I was using on the level 1 projects, and from now on I think sometimes I switch back to this one if it's simple, but we'll be using dot format and putting the variables into the curly braces. Alright, as always, if you come up with something cool on this one, you think of a different way to use modulo or a different math function that you think could be done better than on a calculator, send me the code and we'll put it on the site and help other people learn. As always, if you do something, you break your code by fooling around with it, it happens. You got to try new things. Make sure you go back to the website and you can just copy it and paste it back in, and you're good to go again. Alright, have fun playing around with it, and I hope you have a good time.